Your soulmate may be leaving next week. The real reason could surprise you. My beloved child. Before next week arrives, the person connected to your heart may make a decision you never expected, and the strangest part is that they may already be preparing for it without telling you. Something has shifted quietly behind the scenes. A conversation happened. A possibility appeared. And suddenly, your soulmate began looking at the coming days differently. You may notice them becoming unusually thoughtful, taking longer to answer simple questions, or speaking about the future without explaining exactly what they mean. But don't assume their silence means their feelings have changed. That is the first misunderstanding this story is about to unravel. Because the reason they may be leaving has far less to do with escaping you, and far more to do with something they believe they must settle before they can move toward the future they truly want. Don't skip. One detail changes the meaning of everything. Here is where it becomes unexpected. Your soulmate may have recently been presented with an opportunity, responsibility, or unfinished situation that requires them to go somewhere else for a while. At first, they thought they could simply refuse it. Then something happened that made walking away from that responsibility feel impossible. Yet there is one person they have been thinking about while making this decision: you. That is why their behavior may seem contradictory. One moment, they appear ready to move forward. The next, they hesitate. They may even be wondering whether telling you now would create unnecessary distance before anything has actually happened. Stay till the end, because there is a deeper question hiding underneath their possible departure. Why would someone preparing to leave suddenly become more serious about the person they might have to leave behind? The answer begins with something they realized only recently. And this realization may be the real turning point. Your soulmate started imagining what their life would feel like if they left without ever making their true intentions clear to you. Suddenly, the journey itself stopped being the biggest issue. The unanswered connection between you became bigger. They began remembering conversations, small moments, unfinished words, and opportunities when they almost revealed what you meant to them, but stopped. Now next week feels like a deadline they never expected to face. Something huge is waiting for you, because their next decision may not simply be whether they leave. It may be whether they finally tell you something before they go. And there is one particular reason they have kept those words hidden until now. A reason connected to what they believe you would do if you knew the complete truth. What they are considering revealing before next week could completely change what this leaving actually means. But there is one detail they have not told anyone yet, and it changes the entire meaning of next week. Your soulmate is not only thinking about where they may have to go, they are thinking about what happens between you before that moment arrives. The closer the date gets, the harder it becomes for them to pretend this connection is something they can simply place on hold. They expected distance to make the decision easier. Instead, it has made their feelings clearer. That is why you may sense an unusual emotional shift around them. They are realizing that leaving without saying what has been sitting in their heart could become the one decision they keep questioning afterward. Don't skip, because the next clue explains why they waited until now to consider telling you. For a long time, they believed timing was the problem. They told themselves they needed more certainty, better circumstances, or one unmistakable sign that opening up to you would be worth the risk of changing everything. But now the possibility of leaving has removed that comfort. Suddenly, someday no longer feels unlimited. Your soulmate may be looking back at every moment when they almost spoke honestly and wondering why they stopped themselves. Yet there is another layer. They are not only worried about how you might respond, they are wondering whether you have already started moving forward without them. That thought has made next week feel completely different. Stay till the end, because what they may do before leaving could surprise even the people closest to them. The unexpected part is that their departure may actually push them toward you rather than away from you. Instead of disappearing quietly, they may be considering one meaningful conversation that finally removes the uncertainty between you. And they have been mentally rehearsing what they want to say, changing the words again and again because one sentence feels especially difficult to admit. Something huge is waiting for you, because that sentence is connected to the real reason this possible departure matters so much. Your soulmate has realized that wherever they go next, they do not want the story between you to remain unfinished. But before they can tell you that, they need to reveal what originally made them hesitate, and once that hidden reason comes forward, you may understand why they were never truly preparing to leave you behind. What originally made them hesitate was never a lack of feeling, it was the fear of making a promise before they knew whether they could keep it. Your soulmate may have known about this possible change longer than you realize, but they kept it private because nothing was certain. They didn't want to pull you into plans that could disappear overnight, and they certainly didn't want you waiting for answers they couldn't give. So they chose silence, believing it was the more responsible choice. But that silence created something they never intended: distance. Now, with next week approaching, they are beginning to understand that protecting you from uncertainty may have accidentally made you question their intentions. Don't skip, because this is where their entire plan begins to change. A few days ago, something may have happened that forced them to look at the situation differently. Perhaps someone asked a simple question about what they would miss most if they left, or perhaps they found themselves imagining the first day in that unfamiliar place. Whatever triggered it, their mind immediately returned to you. Not the opportunity. Not the journey. You. And that realization surprised them because it revealed something they had been avoiding. Leaving might solve one responsibility, but it would not erase what remained unfinished between you. Stay till the end, because from that moment forward, your soulmate stopped asking only, "Should I go?" and started asking a much more important question: "What do I need to say before I do?" And now they may be considering something they would never have considered even a week ago. Before leaving, they want clarity, not a dramatic promise, not pressure, but one honest conversation where neither of you has to guess anymore. Something huge is waiting for you, because they have finally identified the sentence they were afraid to say. It isn't simply that they will miss you. It is that this possible departure made them realize how deeply they had included you in the future they were quietly imagining. That is the real reason next week feels so important. Yet there is still one final complication standing between them and that conversation. They recently learned something about your own plans, and what they heard has made them wonder whether they waited too long. Then came the information they were never expecting to hear. Somehow, your soulmate got the impression that your life may be changing too, that you are no longer standing in the same emotional place where they once assumed they could find you whenever they were ready. Maybe it came through an ordinary conversation, a small detail someone mentioned, or simply something different they noticed about you. Whatever caused it, one thought suddenly became impossible to ignore. What if they leave next week and return to discover that the opportunity to speak honestly has already passed? Don't skip, because this possibility has changed their attitude completely. The person who kept waiting for the perfect moment may now be realizing that perfect moments rarely announce themselves. And that realization has created an unexpected decision. Instead of spending these final days quietly preparing to leave, your soulmate may be searching for the right opportunity to reach you before everything changes. They no longer want assumptions controlling the story. They want to know whether what they felt between you was real on both sides, whether the unfinished conversations meant something to you too, and whether distance truly has to become an ending. But there is something even more surprising. The possibility of leaving may not be permanent at all. A choice exists within the situation, one they originally overlooked because they were focused entirely on fulfilling the responsibility in front of them. Stay till the end, because that choice could completely reverse what you thought this story was becoming. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that next week may represent a transition rather than a goodbye. They could leave temporarily, rearrange their plans, or make a decision that allows them to return sooner than anyone expects. But before choosing anything, they want one piece of clarity from you. Something huge is waiting for you, because they are no longer asking themselves whether their feelings are strong enough. They already know that answer. The question now is whether there is still a future worth planning around together. And just when they thought they had finally gathered enough courage to find out, another unexpected detail appeared, something connected to the original reason they were asked to leave. That detail may reveal that this entire journey was never supposed to take them away from you in the first place. That unexpected detail arrived at exactly the moment they were preparing themselves for distance. The situation calling them away may include an option they did not know existed, one that gives them far more control over what happens after next week. Suddenly, what looked like a fixed departure has become a decision with several possible outcomes. And instead of feeling relieved immediately, your soulmate became even more thoughtful, because now they can no longer tell themselves that circumstances are making every choice for them. They have to decide what they genuinely want. Don't skip, because once that freedom appeared, their first thought was not about making the journey easier. Their first thought was about whether they could shape what comes next around the connection they still have with you. This is where their private feelings begin influencing practical decisions. Your soulmate may be reconsidering timing, changing plans, or asking questions they previously avoided because they assumed nothing could be adjusted. And the more possibilities they discover, the clearer one truth becomes: they do not want to build an entirely new chapter while leaving you trapped inside an unanswered one. They want to know where you stand before making a choice that could affect the months ahead. Stay till the end, because there is something important about this change of heart. They are not looking for you to stop them from leaving. They are hoping for something much simpler and more meaningful: clarity. One honest answer from you could help them understand whether this connection belongs only to the past or deserves a place in what they are planning next. But there is still something they haven't admitted, even to the people helping them prepare. Your soulmate has quietly imagined two versions of next week. In one, they leave exactly as planned, carrying unanswered questions with them. In the other, they speak to you first, and that conversation changes how they approach everything afterward. Something huge is waiting for you, because the second version is becoming harder for them to ignore. They have even started thinking about the exact moment they could finally reach out. Yet just before making that move, they discovered one more piece of information about the timeline. Next week may not be the real deadline after all. There is an earlier moment, much closer than anyone expected, when their final decision must actually be made, and what happens before that moment could determine whether they leave under the original plan at all. The real deadline may arrive before next week even begins, and your soulmate was not prepared for that. They thought they still had several days to organize their thoughts, decide what to tell you, and figure out whether this connection could survive a temporary change. Then they learned that one important choice must be confirmed much sooner. Suddenly, waiting became a decision of its own. Every hour they remain silent now carries more weight, because once that choice is made, changing the plan could become much harder. Don't skip, because this pressure has revealed something important about them. When they imagined making the final decision without speaking to you first, it simply didn't feel right. For the first time, they stopped treating you as someone outside their plans and started recognizing how much your presence has already shaped them. That realization may explain why their next move could feel unusually direct. Your soulmate is no longer searching for perfect words. They are thinking about honesty. They want to explain why they kept the possible departure private, why they seemed distant, and why they allowed uncertainty to grow between you. But there is one confession underneath all of those explanations that matters more than everything else. Stay till the end, because this is what they struggle to admit even to themselves. Part of them hoped the situation would resolve on its own so they would never have to reveal how much leaving you would actually affect them. They thought staying quiet would make everything simpler. Instead, the approaching deadline showed them that silence was becoming the hardest option of all. And now the story is moving toward a choice neither of you may have expected. Your soulmate could still leave next week, but their reasons are no longer what they seemed at the beginning. This is not simply about going somewhere new. It is about completing something necessary while deciding what deserves to come afterward. Something huge is waiting for you, because they may already know what they want that afterward to include. There is only one thing they need to discover before making the final commitment: whether you still see a place for them in your future too. And just when they were preparing to ask that question, they received an unexpected update about the departure itself, an update that could change not only when they leave, but whether the original journey needs to happen at all. And then the update arrived, the one piece of news capable of turning their entire plan upside down. Your soulmate learned that the journey they had been preparing for may no longer be required in the way they originally believed. Another arrangement has appeared, and suddenly they have a choice: follow the original plan next week, delay it, or handle the responsibility differently. But instead of making them instantly happy, this new freedom has forced them to confront the question they had been avoiding. If circumstances are no longer pushing them away, what do they actually want? Don't skip, because their answer surprised even them. When they pictured staying, the first thing they imagined was not comfort or convenience. It was finally having enough time to discover what could happen between you. That doesn't mean everything becomes simple overnight. Your soulmate still has responsibilities to consider, and they know one emotional realization cannot make every practical decision disappear. But something inside them has changed. Before, They were planning around an ending they assumed was unavoidable. Now they are planning around possibilities. They are beginning to understand that the real reason this departure affected them so deeply was never the destination itself. It was the thought of leaving while you still misunderstood their silence. Stay till the end, because this is where the hidden meaning of next week begins coming into focus. They may have spent all this time believing they needed to choose between moving forward and keeping you in their life. Now they are discovering those two things may not have to be opposites. But one unanswered question still stands between realization and action. Your soulmate can change schedules, reconsider plans, and create new options, but they cannot decide how you feel for you. That is why the conversation they once feared has now become the most important part of everything. Something huge is waiting for you, because they may finally be ready to explain the entire truth without hiding behind timing or circumstances. And there is one last detail they intend to reveal when that moment comes. While everyone around them believed they were preparing only for next week, your soulmate had quietly been preparing something else too. It involves you, a decision about what happens after this uncertainty ends, and a promise they refused to make until they knew they could truly keep it. What they have been quietly preparing was never meant to convince you to wait for them. It was something more thoughtful, a clear plan for how they could remain present in your life even if next week still takes them somewhere else temporarily. For days, your soulmate has been considering schedules, responsibilities, and every realistic possibility that could prevent distance from turning into silence. And this matters because they once believed uncertainty meant they had nothing meaningful to offer you. Now they understand that honesty may matter more than having every answer. Don't skip, because this is the moment their hidden intention becomes clearer. They are not trying to make a dramatic promise about an unknown future. They are preparing to tell you that if this connection matters to both of you, they are finally willing to stop treating it like something that can always be discussed later. Yet one question keeps returning whenever they imagine that conversation: what if you no longer believe them? Your soulmate knows their silence may have created confusion. They understand that suddenly revealing strong intentions right before a possible departure could leave you wondering why they waited so long. That is why they want to explain the missing piece first. Stay till the end, because the missing piece has nothing to do with another person or a secret life. They were waiting until they could offer consistency rather than uncertainty. They wanted their actions to support their words. Ironically, the possibility of leaving taught them that waiting for perfect circumstances could cost them the very connection they were trying to protect. Now they would rather speak honestly and let the truth stand on its own. And there is still one final surprise hidden inside their plan. The alternative arrangement they recently discovered may allow them to complete what they need to do without being gone nearly as long as expected. That means the question is shifting again. It may no longer be, are they leaving next week, but, what are they coming back to? Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has started thinking beyond the departure itself. They are imagining the conversation after the uncertainty, the moment when neither of you has to interpret silence anymore, and the possibility of building something with actual clarity. Only after questioning the original decision did your soulmate recognize something they had completely overlooked. They agreed to leave because they believed moving forward required them to handle everything alone. At the time, accepting the opportunity seemed mature and practical. They convinced themselves that personal feelings should remain separate from major decisions. But as next week moved closer, that belief began falling apart. Every plan they made seemed to bring the same unanswered thought back to the surface: you. Don't skip, because this realization has changed the question entirely. They are no longer asking whether leaving is the right move. They are asking why they assumed building their future meant excluding the person who had already become important to it. That question led them back through months of choices, conversations, and moments when they deliberately kept their deeper intentions hidden. Your soulmate began noticing a pattern. Whenever the connection between you started feeling more meaningful, they became more careful instead of more open. They thought caution would protect both of you from disappointment. Instead, it prevented either of you from knowing what was actually possible. Stay till the end, because they have finally recognized the difference between patience and avoidance. Patience gives something meaningful room to grow. Avoidance keeps postponing the truth because the answer might change everything. And your soulmate may have reached the point where they would rather discover the answer than spend another chapter wondering what might have happened if they had spoken sooner. That is why the days before next week may become more important than the departure itself. Your soulmate is preparing for one honest moment where they can explain that leaving was never meant to erase this connection. In fact, the possibility of going away may have revealed its value more clearly than staying ever did. Something huge is waiting for you, because they are finally ready to stop letting circumstances make emotional decisions for them. Yet there is one more revelation they have been holding back, the most personal piece of the entire story. Before agreeing to leave, they had already imagined a future involving you, but they dismissed it as something that could wait. Now they have reopened that possibility, and one specific plan they once abandoned has suddenly returned to their mind. If they choose to act on it before next week, the direction of this story could change completely. That abandoned plan was more meaningful than they ever allowed themselves to admit. Long before this possible departure appeared, your soulmate had considered creating a real opportunity for the two of you to talk about what comes next. Not through hints, not through assumptions, but through an honest conversation about whether your paths could actually move in the same direction. They postponed it because the timing never seemed perfect. Then the possibility of leaving arrived, and they convinced themselves the conversation should wait even longer. Now they see the contradiction. Don't skip, because next week has taught them something they could not understand while everything felt comfortable. Some conversations become important precisely because the future is uncertain, not because every detail has already been solved. So they have begun rebuilding that plan with a completely different mindset. Your soulmate is no longer trying to predict your answer before speaking. They are no longer rehearsing every possible outcome or searching for guarantees. Instead, they want to tell you what changed inside them when leaving became real. Stay till the end, because one realization sits at the center of everything. When they imagined beginning this next chapter without knowing where they stood with you, the new opportunity suddenly felt incomplete. That does not mean they expect you to rearrange your life around them. It means they finally understand that your connection deserves a real choice instead of another delay. And for someone who has spent so long protecting themselves through silence, making that choice may be the biggest change of all. But just as they became ready to move forward, another unexpected possibility entered the picture. The people involved in their plans may be willing to adjust the timing once more, giving your soulmate a window they never thought they would have. Something huge is waiting for you, because that extra time could allow them to do exactly what they once believed was impossible: handle the responsibility ahead without leaving this connection completely unresolved. Yet your soulmate does not want to use that extra time to hide again. They want to use it to finally bring everything into the open. And there is one sentence they keep returning to whenever they imagine standing in front of you. A sentence that explains why the thought of leaving next week affected them so deeply. They have not said it yet, but once they do, you may finally understand what they were truly afraid of losing, and now that unspoken sentence is becoming impossible for them to ignore. Your soulmate has finally admitted to themselves that what frightened them most was never leaving next week. It was the possibility of returning later and discovering that the connection between you had quietly disappeared while they were gone. That realization changed the emotional weight of everything. Suddenly, every delayed conversation mattered. Every moment when they almost opened up mattered. Every assumption they allowed you to make mattered. Don't skip, because they are no longer thinking like someone simply preparing for a temporary change. They are thinking like someone who has discovered what they genuinely do not want to lose. And once that truth became clear, their next decision stopped being about whether they should speak to you. It became about how soon they could finally do it. But there is something even more revealing about the way they are preparing for that conversation. Your soulmate does not want to arrive with an impossible promise or ask you to put your life on hold. They want to offer something more believable. Honesty about where they are going, how long the change might last, what can still be adjusted, and what they hope could exist between you afterward. Stay till the end, because this is where their intentions become much clearer. They have realized that real connection is not protected by pretending uncertainty does not exist. It is protected when two people understand what they are choosing. For the first time, your soulmate wants you to have that choice too. And whatever your answer eventually becomes, they would rather hear the truth than leave carrying another unanswered question. Yet one final development may change the timing again. The decision they believed had to be made before next week could now depend on a conversation happening much sooner, and your soulmate knows exactly which conversation matters most. Something huge is waiting for you, because they may be closer to reaching out than you think. They have already moved past the hardest internal question. They know what they feel. They know why leaving suddenly became so difficult. And they know silence can no longer protect what matters to them. But there is still one piece they have not revealed, the surprising reason they accepted the departure in the first place. It was connected to something they hoped to accomplish for their future, and once you discover what that future was supposed to include, the entire meaning of next week may change again. The surprising truth is that your soulmate may have accepted this departure because they believed it could help them build the stability they had been missing. They were not trying to create a future farther away from you. In their mind, they were trying to become more prepared for whatever came next. That is why they kept the deeper reason private. Saying it aloud would have meant admitting that some of their future plans already included the possibility of you, and they were not ready to reveal that much. Don't skip, because this changes the meaning of their silence completely. While you may have wondered whether they were becoming uncertain about the connection, they were quietly asking themselves whether they could become the kind of person who could finally approach it with confidence, consistency, and clear intentions. But now they have discovered the flaw in that plan. They were so focused on becoming ready for the future that they almost forgot the future cannot be built entirely in private. You cannot know what someone intends if they never tell you. Your soulmate understands that now, and it may be why their behavior changes before next week arrives. Stay till the end, because they are beginning to replace preparation with action. Instead of silently imagining what could happen months from now, they want to discover what is possible between you today. And that means telling you why they considered leaving, what they hoped the opportunity would accomplish, and why your place in their thoughts became clearer as the departure approached. The truth they once considered too vulnerable to reveal may now be the only thing capable of ending the uncertainty. And there is another detail they have only recently admitted to themselves. If they do leave, they no longer want their return to feel like starting over with you. They want this conversation to happen first so both of you understand that distance does not automatically erase what has been growing. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate may be preparing to ask one question that finally brings the entire story into focus, not whether you will wait, but whether you believe this connection deserves a real chance when the uncertainty settles. Yet before they ask it, they intend to reveal one final piece of their original plan, something they had hoped to do after returning. And when you hear what they were quietly planning for that moment, you may realize that next week was never supposed to be the ending at all. What they had quietly planned for their return was never a dramatic gesture. It was something far more meaningful. They wanted to come back with clarity. Your soulmate believed that if they handled this responsibility first, organized the uncertain parts of their life, and returned feeling more secure about what came next, they could finally approach you without hesitation. That was the plan they never told you. Leave temporarily. Complete what needed to be completed. Return. Then finally have the conversation they had postponed for far too long. But now they recognize the problem. By waiting until afterward, they were asking time to protect a connection they had never clearly defined. Don't skip, because that realization has completely rewritten their plan. They no longer want their return to contain the first truth. They want the truth spoken before they ever go. And this is why the next few days may carry an entirely different energy. Your soulmate could become less guarded, more intentional, and surprisingly willing to address things they once avoided. They are beginning to understand that the strongest thing they can offer you before next week is not certainty about every future detail, it is certainty about their intentions. Stay till the end, because they have finally separated what they can control from what they cannot. They cannot guarantee that schedules will remain unchanged. They cannot know exactly how every circumstance will unfold. But they can choose whether they leave you confused. They can choose whether they finally explain why you remained in their thoughts through every version of this decision. And most importantly, they can choose whether fear continues writing the story for them. Now only one question remains: will they speak before the opportunity disappears? Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate may already be closer to that moment than anyone realizes. The words are no longer unclear in their mind. The reason for leaving is no longer hidden from themselves. And the future they once planned to discuss after returning has suddenly become something they want to acknowledge now. But there is one last discovery they need to make before stepping forward. They have been wondering whether you noticed the change in them, whether you sensed that their silence was carrying something deeper. And recently, They saw one small reaction from you that made them believe you might understand far more than they expected. That single moment could be what finally convinces them to stop waiting and reveal everything. That one small reaction from you stayed in their mind longer than you could imagine. Maybe you seemed calmer than before, maybe you stopped searching for explanations, or perhaps you simply carried yourself as though you had decided not to chase uncertain answers anymore. Whatever they noticed, it made your soulmate realize something uncomfortable. You may have learned how to move forward without knowing what they truly feel. Suddenly, their silence no longer seemed harmless. It looked like a choice that could eventually create the very distance they were afraid next week would bring. Don't skip, because this is where their hesitation begins turning into urgency. They are starting to understand that they cannot expect you to recognize intentions they have never clearly expressed. That realization has made them rethink how they want to approach you. They do not want to arrive with confusing hints or leave you decoding another unfinished conversation. This time, they want their words to match their actions. Stay till the end, because your soulmate may finally explain that the possible departure was connected to building greater stability, not escaping this connection. They may tell you that leaving temporarily seemed easier when they believed there would always be another chance to speak later. But seeing that subtle change in you reminded them that life does not freeze while someone gathers courage. You have your own direction, your own choices, and your own future. And strangely, recognizing that has not pushed them away. It has made them more certain that if they want a place in your future, they must stop assuming that place will simply remain open. Now the countdown to next week feels completely different. Your soulmate is no longer watching the days disappear while wondering what they should do. They are moving toward a decision. Something huge is waiting for you, because the conversation they originally planned for after returning may happen before they leave, perhaps much sooner than expected. But there is still one final question they want to answer before revealing everything. They need to know whether the change they noticed in you means you have truly closed this chapter, or whether you simply stopped waiting for them to open it. And just when they thought they would have to guess, another small clue appeared. One that made them believe the connection may not be as distant as they feared. What they noticed next could finally give them the confidence to tell you why their future plans kept leading back to you.